To me, Gene, yeah, you could still make the playoffs. You could go 13-0 first of all. That's the only way you're getting there. It was before Jordan got hurt. The only way you're getting there is if you win out and you win all your games, and that's still quite possible for Florida State. They can do that. The problem is, will the committee allow you to make the playoffs? And, late last week, Gene, I guess you call it this week technically, you put a video out on the channel talking about 2014, looking back in that situation where Florida State was undefeated, and for portions of the season, 3 teams were in front of Florida State with a loss.
Literally, the end of the regular season, 3 one-loss teams are ahead of Florida State. The committee ranked it that way.
So the committee has done that before, and it has happened to Florida State. In this instance, with an injury, and they do take injuries into account as the way they do in college basketball. Same thing with the college football playoff selection committee in football. This style points are now of the utmost importance next week and in Charlotte. If you can win those 2 games and Tate engineers a lethal offense, I probably shouldn't use that word given our previous head coach, but if he can, like an offense that runs up the numbers into the 30s or the 40s in both games, I think you make a case at that point without getting too much help from the other conferences and teams dropping along the way. But, Gene, I'd be fascinated by your thoughts because you love to talk about the big picture. You've been on pretty much all of our reaction shows for the playoff so far. So what is your take on would the committee still have the door opened to a 13-0 Florida State with Tate Rodemaker as a starting quarterback?
Well, a lot of stuff has to. Well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for your support over the years and talking about being with Warchant all this time through all these massive events in your life. That warms my heart when I hear stuff like that. So thank you so much for your support and taking the ride with us. But, going back to the playoff thing, Tom, a lot of it's like I kept saying over and over, a lot of weird stuff has to happen. Right now, it looks like Washington's about to run out the clock and get a 2-point win against. So one of the nightmare scenarios is happening. I thought Washington might lose to Oregon State, and it looks like they're about to pull that one off. The good news is at least Louisville won. So if they can beat Kentucky, at least you'll be against a top 9 or 8 team. I think that's going to look good on the resume to do that. But yeah, so the fear, of course, is, again, the committee, they're humans. They have biases. We know they have an SEC bias. Everybody seems to, especially ESPN. Let's face it, they're tied in with a committee. It's an incestuous relationship with ESPN, and they love the SEC. So the fear is Alabama goes and wins a close game against Georgia, and they're going to think those are the 2 best teams on paper because they're Georgia and Alabama. And the fear of Washington, Washington is passing. They've won this game. Washington is passing Florida State. I can already say it now. They're going to be number 5. I'm warning people now, be prepared on Tuesday when that committee comes out. Washington is going to jump Florida State to number 4. They will drop to number 5. Now they still have to play Oregon. And we're going to assume, as bad as Auburn losing to New Mexico State today, so I'm assuming Alabama's going to house them and be in the SEC championship. So the fear is, and it's playing out the way I said it might, is that Alabama, if they're able to beat Georgia, then the committee's got a difficult decision to make. And if Washington beats Oregon for the Pac-12 championship, then they've got a real problem. Do they dock Florida State? Because as you said, Tom, and you sent me a couple examples that's happened in the past where the committee has come out and said they do take injuries into account. When you have a Heisman Trophy candidate and the best player in the team is out, this is not the same Florida State team that beat LSU, that went and beat at Clemson, which, by the way, that's one thing I should have brought up in the video. Nobody beats Clemson in Clemson. North Carolina with Drake May, who could be one of the top things I saw, he's the number 1 quarterback now. One of the early things I've seen. Notre Dame, who basically owned Ohio State except for the final 4th down play, they couldn't beat Clemson and Clemson. Florida State could, but for some reason that's not even brought up in any of these discussions. So, but my point is the quarterback that led you to those wins, and the one thing Florida State was kind of hanging its hat on, is now not in the equation. They're not, and I can tell you, they're not going to look in the fact that Darrell Jackson will be back. They're not going to dig that deep to say, well, you've got an elite defensive tackle who's disruptive, who's going to be back potentially for the playoffs. So that's my fear, is that it could play out this way. So don't be surprised if Florida State does happen to beat Florida in Louisville, especially if they don't do so with style points, as you pointed out, Tom. That they end up being on the outside looking in. And I pointed out over and over in that video, it's extremely unlikely. But now with Jordan out, I think if that plays out perfectly, I think it's a realistic possibility at this point.
You need Louisville to win next week because that's going to help you in the
That's
style
going to
play.
help a lot because you're going to say they're going to beat a top 8 team, let's say, for a conference championship and be undefeated, and you're still going to kick them out.
Yeah, it's to me there are two questions here. Can Florida State go 13-0? To that, yes, full stop, absolutely. They
But
can
I
still go
but
13-0.
versus maybe 80-90% sure, maybe I'm about 60%. I mean, 50-60%. I mean, it's the percentage has gone way down.
Oh, we'll take a look at what Vegas thinks. Gene, now Mertz got hurt, so you probably aren't
It's
going to
not
go.
it's not a wash though. Jordan's a lot more important to Florida State than Mertz is for Florida.
No, just what I'm saying is that they might turn the line off for that game, but the future was at 11. It was Florida State favored by 11
That's
points
what
on
I
the
saw. I
road.
thought I saw an early line. It was
Yeah.
11, right?
And if Mertz was healthy, you'd get a better idea of what Vegas
So
thinks
what is it going
Jordan's
to be
worth.
like 3 or 4 now, probably?
But now with Mertz injury, so there's a double impact to the line, so you don't get a good idea. It's probably 5 to 6 points in Vegas, I would think, that Jordan was worth. That, I mean, Florida State would still be favored, but maybe on the other side of a touchdown, 6, something like that. At any rate, that's for a reason. Florida State is not as good of a football team without Jordan Travis. That's just true.
We're not. Take any elite quarterback. Take anybody off of an elite team. Take
Bo Nix out.
Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix or any of these guys off their team. Look, we've lost Jordan, but we need to keep going on. We've got a guy we're lucky. We've got a very competent backup who's very talented, and we're still, all our goals are still in reach. Just go through. So I think shaking things up too crazy would be a bad move.
Yeah, I think this is not like one thing I'd say, Ralph, is the practice structure of Florida State is not like the NFL where like the starters get all the reps. And then, there's just like this other period of time that's very small for the backups or the second team offense. And because of that, Brock's going to get a ton of reps this week. Like he'll get plenty. He doesn't have to be given more because there's a speeding up process. The thing that's tough for Brock is being out for so long with that hand injury. He didn't have that time to refine his game. I mean, if Tate goes down, you're in a real disaster mode here. Where Brock has the chops, but that's a lot to ask if he has to go in for a series or more against Florida and Gainesville, like at night. Geez, that's a doomsday scenario. And you can't run the ball. Oh my goodness. That's potentially a big problem. I'm not saying he's not up to it. It's just, that's an awful lot to ask, too much to ask of a true freshman. But Tate's got to get in with the ones. He's got to get more time with the ones. And so he's going to get a ton of it. And, for all intents and purposes, it's now his job to lose through the end of next year. It is now Tate Rodemaker's job to lose through the end of next season.
And I hope we go to the springtime where like it's not a competition because Tate has done so well these next couple of games. You beat Florida down in Gainesville, you win the ACC championship, you acquaint yourself well in the playoffs. Hopefully they're there. That's going to go a long way to solidifying his position going forward. And Ralph also brought up, if we're an OC, look, it's cliche, but to me, it's like when you're down in Gainesville, give him some easy reads, some easy stuff to start out, get his confidence up, because we've seen he can have these moments where he can make mistakes and press and throw balls he shouldn't throw. But I'm going to make things as simple and easy as possible. Got to keep him ahead of the sticks. Don't put him in 3rd and 13 situation. If you're in a 3rd and 13 early in the game, do a draw play. Do a screen, do something simple. Do not make him sit back there in that hostile environment and try to make reads and make a throw.
Yeah, the best friend of a quarterback when you can't run the ball, it's tough, but it's throwing on first down. Down. That's the best thing you can do for a quarterback in that situation. So, Ralph, I'd say quick game. Also, he's folded a lot, but he didn't. He folded, then he unfolded himself against Louisville.
Yes, he did.
Last year. And the things that they ran, I remember this because we did a big breakdown with Dominic Robinson after it was over. But they ran basic RPOs. I mean, some of it was very basic. It's just you read the linebackers. If they're coming downhill, you throw to Johnny over the top. Remember, that's some basic slants. I'm not talking about the big shots down the field. One of the touchdowns was that play. His first feel-good play in the second half, the third quarter of that game, was a basic RPO, and it's a quick slant to Johnny. And then when they took the shots, there was a lot of protection, max protection, 6-7 guys in there for the deep shots of Johnny. He took a hit as he delivered that strike down the field. I mean, they got him in rhythm with basics, vanilla offense, and then just letting him scan the field and make quick decisions. So I don't think that it's any different at this point, Gene, in terms of what you asked Tate to do. The only difference this year is that Florida State is less explosive on the ground in the running game, and that could be a problem overall. And that's the challenge that they're going to face.
And I think they got to think about, too, keeping another tight end from, like you said, max protect. I mean, I think he may need a little bit more protection in this thing. I think that may go a long way. And we saw tonight a couple times he held on to the ball too long, so he's going to need that protection.
Yep. Quick throws, designed quick throws help mitigate that issue, which is he holds on to the ball too long. So we'll see what they do next week. And it's going to be, I mean, if Mike Norvell thought he was going to get a good night's sleep tonight after an easy win, I mean, he's going right to the drawing board, I would think, tonight.